The member for Morphett.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I congratulate you on your re-election and your elevated role. Firstly, I would like to acknowledge that we meet here on the First Nations land of the Kaurna people, and I pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging. I'm immensely proud to be part of a Malinauskas Labor government which implemented the first stage of the Uluru Statement from the Heart with an enshrined voice to our South Australian Parliament, and I'll continue to work hand in hand with our First Nations Australians. As part of our great democracy, I respectfully pledged allegiance to the King when sworn into this 56th Parliament of South Australia. However, one day I hope that I, along with my fellow parliamentarians, will be able to swear allegiance to an Australian head of state. Echoing the words of my political hero, Paul Keating, I too believe Australia becoming a republic is inevitable. The 1999 referendum was one of my earliest political experiences. As a young teacher in the Pilbara, I led a campaign, but unfortunately the yes vote did not go our way. But I will continue the fight for an Australian head of state, as I'm certain this would be the desire of the average person on the street. But that's the great thing about our democracy. We can debate something as important as our constitution in a non-violent manner, making us the envy of many parts of the world. This is something we must preserve above all else. My earliest memory is of a family holiday with my mum, dad and older siblings, travelling on the Indian Pacific from our home in Perth across the Nullarbor Plain to South Australia. My father Ray and my brother Tim shared the bunk beds in one cabin, while my mother Jan, my sister Johnine and I shared the bunks in the cabin next door. I still recall my dad manoeuvring our white Ford Falcon 500 station wagon off the carriage at Port Pirie before driving down to the seaside suburb of Glenelg, where we enjoyed a few days of relaxation by the coast. I remember my sister's 5th birthday cake on the train, which means I would have only recently turned 3. My other recollections of that trip are understandably very sketchy, and I've relied on older family members to fill in the missing pieces. Some 2 decades later, Glenelg was also the location of my first date with my now wife, Nicole. I wish my memory of our mini-golf match at Magic Mountain were equally as hazy. But unfortunately, no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't overcome the early deficit and Nicole won. She politely refrained from rubbing it in, but I knew, given her competitive nature, she was quietly very proud of herself. I learnt a valuable lesson that day about complacency and the danger of underestimating one's opponent. A few years later, we would purchase a home and raise our family alongside the Glenelg tram line. Since then, Nicole and our children, like many locals, have enjoyed countless outings to the bay, savouring the local cuisine, attending music festivals, watching the Bay Sheffield, completing the City to Bay at Partha Willyanga Collie Reserve, welcoming the New Year fireworks, cooling off on a hot summer's day at the beach or browsing the markets. That family trip across the Nullarbor to Glenelg took place in 1977. This was the first, and until now, the only previous election success for the Australian Labor Party in the division of Morphett, as the 1979 election marked the first of 12 consecutive victories for the Liberal Party. My parents would never have imagined that the youngest of their 3 children would, half a century later, become the local Member of Parliament. I feel very deeply honoured to have been elected as the member for Morphett, and it's a privilege I'll never take for granted. I wish to acknowledge all candidates from this year's election, in particular the outgoing member Stephen Patterson for his contributions. I wish him, his family and his staff all the very best for the future. I also wish to acknowledge all previous Labor candidates who put up their hand to fly the flag for our great cause, including Rosemary Clancy, Tim Looker, Mark Siebentritt and Cameron Hurst, to name a few. My family's story in Australia began some 5 generations ago with my great-great-grandfather, James Priest, who was transported on the Pyrenees convict voyage to Fremantle in 1851. James was pardoned within 2 years. He married a fellow Irish immigrant and settled down to work the land in York, Western Australia. This was a more hopeful prospect, having escaped the potato famine and a colonial oppression in Ireland. They had children, including my great-grandfather, who went on to marry my great-grandmother, an orphan of French heritage. My mother's side of the family is of Italian descent. They sought their fortunes by venturing to the goldfields town of Norseman at the western end of the Eyre Highway. Like so many Australians, I've benefited from generations of hard-working migrants who have played their part in building modern Australia. My father Ray and my mother Jan were born in 1938 and 1939 respectively. Dad was the son of a boilermaker and cook, while my mum was the daughter of a truck driver and homemaker. The fear my grandparents must have experienced during World War II, with the men away at war and the women raising the children on their own, is difficult to comprehend. After the war, Dad grew up in a modest 2-bedroom family home that was not large enough to sleep all children. Being the eldest, his bedroom was beneath the outside veranda. The family could only afford 1 pair of shoes per child, with a choice of black leather shoes or sport shoes. Dad, of course, chose the sport shoes. Life was not easy for Mum either. After the trauma of her parents losing an older son before she was born, she became the primary carer for her own mother as she battled cancer. It's almost unimaginable to think that as a 12-year-old child, she was tasked with administering injections to my grandmother, only to watch her pass away at just 36 years of age. I grew up in a middle-class family in suburban Perth and was educated at Catholic schools. My father was a humble and wise banker, and my mother went on to become a caring and compassionate nurse. Looking back, their example of service profoundly shaped my own vocation as an educator. My father passed away in 2020, aged 81, having lived a good and full life. Tragically, however, my mother-in-law, Irene, died unexpectedly some 6 months before Nicole and my wedding, aged only 53. These experiences made me acutely aware that without our health, we have very little else. This government has already invested heavily in health, and we all know there's so much more to be done. My mother, who turned 87 last week, was unable to make the trip to Adelaide for this maiden speech. However, she'll be watching the live stream from her bedroom, within arm's reach of one of her most prized possessions, the 2026 edition of the AFL Gather Round football record, the only Mother's Day present that she requests from me each year. As the youngest of 3 children, life in the 80s was wonderfully simple. For me, it was footy in winter, cricket in summer, and swimming over the Christmas holiday period. A world quite unlike the complex social media saturated environment that my own children have had to navigate. I applaud this world-leading government for having the courage to make the necessary changes to protect our young people. My siblings and I were diligent students who worked hard and graduated from university, the first generation of our family to be afforded the opportunity. During my childhood, I recall several pivotal moments where I ultimately heeded my parents' wise counsel. At the age of 12, I chose to abandon the annual VAC-swim program as it was simply not the done thing to do as an emerging teenager. However, after a 1-year break, my parents convinced me to return, and subsequent years later, I earned my bronze medallion. Then, at 17 years of age, only a matter of weeks being too young to join my brother and sister to be employed as swimming teachers over the summer, it took considerable persuasion from Mum and Dad before I agreed to volunteer and assist with local classes at the pool. I initially was frustrated at giving up my time without pay, but that wise investment paid dividends in the years to follow. The next summer, I was again a swimming teacher, but this time I was paid. The year after that, I was elevated to instruct bronze medallion students. The year after that, I was promoted to second in charge, and finally I was appointed centre supervisor. Some 3 decades on, I've taught or coached swimming almost every year and often reflect on what path might have been had it not been for my parents' foresight. I now live near the coast and love the water, and it's very much woven into the fabric of our community. I was always captivated come election time. My first political memory is of Bob Hawke's sweeping victory in 1983. I was always ensured that I was in the car when my parents went to vote, eagerly collecting and studying the how to vote cards. I'd position myself peering over Dad's shoulder just to keep an eye on proceedings. Dad, ever the balanced and measured banker, always claimed to be a swinging voter who did not always vote Labor. Yet my brother and I recall that whenever we watched the nightly news, he seemed to always instinctively resonate with Hawke and Keating and was consistently critical of Fraser, Peacock and Howard. My first active involvement with the Labor Party came when I volunteered at the 1993 federal election, and I soon joined the ranks of the True Believers at the age of 19. My brother Tim and I did it because it simply felt right and it aligns with our values of fairness, humility and integrity. After completing university, I commenced a 30-year teaching career. Over that time, I've taught thousands of students at primary, secondary and university levels. As a young teacher in my early 20s, I may not have fully appreciated the significant role that I played in so many young people's lives. I would be the subject of conversations at thousands of family dinner tables. Teachers are entrusted with enormous responsibility. A single interaction with a student can be life-changing, whether it's career guidance, encouragement to try a new sport, to support through family, friendship or mental health challenges. This responsibility is not unlike that of being a Member of Parliament. I am driven by a determination to give voice to the residents of Morphett who feel that they have never been truly heard before. During the campaign, time and time again, people told me that no politician had ever come to their house, as I personally knocked on more than 15,000 doors. I heard the voice of the man in Nova Gardens who had been unable to work as a truck driver due to his debilitating back injury. He told me that he hadn't bothered to vote in years and the last decent politician was Hawke. Yet, because I knocked on his door, and my son Lachlan followed up with a phone call some weeks later, and then my brother Tim knocked on his door again, he made his way to the polling booth just after 8 a.m. on the 21st of March and greeted me with a warm embrace. I heard the voice of the woman from Somerton Park who has a disability. She was in great distress one morning at the Bayside Village Shopping Centre because she was living in an abusive accommodation. I was able to make the necessary phone calls to connect her with the support that she needed to feel safe. I heard the voice of the Glenelg East resident who was battling cancer and was in despair as he was facing homelessness within days. His unit had just been sold, so he and his sole companion of a dog were being forced to move. Credit to my compassionate campaign manager Daisy, who took time away from our door-knocking schedule to assist in securing him accommodation. I heard the voice of the elderly Glenelg North local who was so touched that I checked in on her during a 35-degree day that she sent a follow-up email to express her gratitude. She was so moved that someone cared about an older woman living alone, having unfortunately lost contact with her own children. When I knocked on her door a few weeks later, she was holding back tears. I also heard the voices of families who want improved facilities for their children in schools and local parks, and I'm proud that we'll be able to deliver on these commitments as part of my local election platform. A central part of my teaching career has been the delivery of physical activity programs to children. I've coached thousands of young people, including my own children, in countless sports, and I'd like to acknowledge the support of ACHPA and SACPASA throughout that journey. I also wish to pay tribute to my long-term teaching colleagues, in particular Chris Ranpazis, Christian O'Dwyer, Dan Milford and Paul Chalobek. For over 15 years, we delivered free quality after-school sport programs with an emphasis on student leadership and the development of interpersonal skills. I look forward to supporting our government's implementation of after-school and holiday physical activity programs and the mandated inclusion of physical activity in curriculum time in schools. Before we had children, Nicole and I travelled the world, including an enriching experience in Dublin, Ireland. We visited the home of Catherine Macaulay, the founder of the Sisters of Mercy, an order that went on to establish schools around the globe, including Nicole's long-term employer, St. Aloysius, and St. Thomas, where I taught and where our children attended primary school. Inspired by the way that sport unites communities and speaks to people of all backgrounds, and appalled by the cruel funding cuts of 2021, I founded the Catherine House Soccer Carnival in partnership with St Leonard's Primary School in Glenelg North. This annual event raises funds and awareness for women experiencing homelessness. Gender equity has always been important to me. For too long, parliaments were imbalanced. I often look up at the suffrage tapestries on the walls of this chamber, and I'm proud that on our side of the chamber, I'm surrounded by as many talented women as men. The same goes for our federal parliament. As a teacher, I served as a girls' sports coordinator, initiated all-girls AFL Auskick sessions at my local Phantoms Club, and I worked to grow female participation in sport, particularly soccer. I recognise that many challenges remain, among them closing the gender pay gap. I'm also concerned that men have a significantly lower life expectancy than women. The disproportionate number of male workplace fatalities and the rates of suicide among young men are matters that weigh heavily on me. Boys perform worse in NAPLAN and have significantly lower ATAR scores. These are challenges we must address together. Over my teaching career, I witnessed parents dropping off their children to school before heading off to work. I could sense the pressure parents faced in juggling their roles as loving parents with the demands of their working day. Yet they're proud of their jobs and they feel a genuine sense of purpose in contributing to society. While wobbleboarding, I watched hundreds of cars drive past with locals heading to work and greeted constituents at trams and bus stops. I regularly receive messages from former students asking me to act as a referee for prospective employers. I believe that, as well as powering the economy, work provides individuals with purpose and dignity. This was eloquently articulated by Pope Leo XIII on the 15th of May, 1891, in his encyclical on rights and duties of capital and labour. It addresses the relationship and mutual duties between labour and capital, and between government and its citizens, with a particular concern for relieving the poverty of the working class. It affirms the rights of workers to form trade unions, rejects both state socialism and laissez-faire capitalism, and upholds the right to private property and a living wage. As Pope Leo wrote, to withhold from a worker the wages that are justly owed is a grave wrong. In more recent times, Pope Francis, speaking at Mass at the Vatican on the 24th of May 2018, similarly condemned wage theft, describing the practice of skimming from workers' pay as a mortal sin. I have personally experienced wage theft as well as the instability of long-term casual employment. In early 2022, I became a test case at the Fair Work Commission under the Morrison government's casual conversion laws, having been unable to secure permanent employment at Flinders University after 16 years, having performed the same role year after year after year. Despite being advised that my claim was unlikely to succeed, I believed it was time to draw a line in the sand. As anticipated, my case was unsuccessful, failing the third and final test, that of significant adjustment, on the basis that converting my employment to permanent would have required substantially higher remuneration. Not long after the Albanese government came to power, with Tony Burke leading significant reforms to casual conversion laws and introduced same job, same pay protections. The industrial relations portfolio is now in the capable hands of South Australia's own Amanda Rishworth, and I wish to also acknowledge the support of New South Wales Senator Tony Sheldon. I will always stand up for the rights of workers, whether the issue is of wage theft, insecure employment or customer abuse, whether you're a fast food or retail worker, an academic, a teacher or employed in any capacity. Situated just south of the airport and connecting to the city by tram, the seat of Morphett is a key tourist destination of our great state, with the many bars and restaurants along Jetty Road, the Marina and along the Broadway. They're world class. I'm proud that I played my part in supporting them and encouraging locals to do so through the recent, highly successful Summer Plan Dining Experience and Cashback program. The suburbs of Park Holme, Morphettville and Glengarry still bear traces of the orchards, vineyards and horse stables that once defined these areas and are now home to harmonious and multicultural communities. Glenelg North is the home site of Parthu Yakuna, the old gum tree, where Governor Hindmarsh proclaims the colony of South Australia. The heritage-listed Cummins House is situated in Nova Gardens, on the former estate of Sir John Morphett, the namesake of the electorate, whose statue sits just outside of this chamber. Racing is an important part of our social fabric, and the thoroughbred industry is an important economic driver. My daughter Gabby is proudly undertaking a certificate in horse training at Morphettville Racecourse as part of her secondary school studies. The electorate is also divided by Warri Parry, the Sturt River. I enjoy Sunday mornings throughout the year joining the Friends of Sturt River group in planting and maintaining vegetation to help rejuvenate the natural flora and fauna. Another defining waterway of our community is the Patawalunga River, the place of the swamp gum, where I participate most weeks when I'm not volunteering at the Saturday morning park run. Sport and recreation is very much a part of the way of life in Morphett. With breathtaking views along our picturesque coastline, the Glenelg Surf Lifesaving Club plays an instrumental role in keeping both locals and visitors safe. This has never been more evident than during the past year with the unprecedented algal bloom. Another magnificent institution is the mighty Glenelg Football Club. I'm a regular at the Tigers games and I've joined the wonderful crew of matchday volunteers over recent years. I also deeply value amateur and junior sport, and I'm proud to support the West Torrensburg Colour Soccer Club, the Morphy Roos, the Fos Camden Footy Club where I coordinate the Little Oz Kickers, as well as playing in the Summer Night Owls competition at the Nova Gardens Bowling and Petanque Club. All of this has been made possible by extraordinary community of volunteers who generously give up their time in the service of others. I believe the best investment any government can make is in education. We have so many outstanding schools in Morphett. I've valued my time working with the boarding community at Emmanuel College. I look forward to working with all schools across all sectors to ensure that every young person has the opportunity to access quality education. Like so many families, we rely on the Glenelg tram and the parallel bike path, whether it's travelling to school or work, to watch sport at Adelaide Oval, to shop in the city or visit the Bay. We value the economic, social and environmental benefits that these services provide, and I'm glad that the trams and trains are once again back in public hands. Furthermore, the 3 overpasses have eliminated dangerous level crossings, including on Morphett Road. All remarkably completed in under 6 months, thanks to the leadership of Treasurer Koutsantonis and his steadfast team. This is an example of the real practical difference a bold, centrist Labor government makes. Not merely talking, but taking action and delivering results. To my campaign manager Daisy, along with Joel, thank you for your leadership and experience in steering the ship on this historic occasion. To my assistant and wingman Simeon, thank you for being by my side and showing me the ropes. I'll never forget your words when a lottery winner was announced on the news, and you said, "What do you mean they've won the lottery? You live in Australia, you've already won." To the rest of my campaign team, Sammy, Lachlan, Luke, Alex, Ben, the Martin team of Matt and Alex, and of course, my Nicole, who was perhaps a little bit shy at that first shopping centre visit, but by the end she could not be prized away from chatting with the customers. And all the volunteers who helped throughout the campaign on election day, thank you all. To my Labor colleagues, including the exuberant David Griffiths, your friendship, vision and humour have meant a great deal. And to Ben Anker for the cheerful phone calls when I needed them most. It's wonderful to be sharing this exciting journey together. I'm truly blessed to have an outstanding staff, including my office manager, Priscilla. Your commitment throughout the campaign is something for which I'm forever grateful, particularly your efforts in those final crucial days, together with those of my brother Tim, ensure that we got over the line. To Jess and Tess, you both demonstrate maturity beyond your years and the experience of Liam and Jordan rounding out a formidable team. To the Morphett sub-branch, including Marie Good, who has been the glue holding us together for so many years, and Michael Wright for his wisdom and guidance. To the members, particularly Saxon, Kerry Lee, Jerry, Maurice, Heather, Dorothy, Surrender and Patrick, thank you. To my parliamentary colleagues who gave up their time to assist, Nick, Katrine, Tung, Kyam, Nats, Chris, Blair, Ella, Zoe, Alex, Joe and Lawrence. Your camaraderie provided a timely and much needed boost of confidence. And to Jane, Olivia and John, your generous support and guidance will serve us well in the years ahead. To the Honourable Justin Hanson, thank you for taking me on as a staff and for sharing your wisdom and mentorship. And to Emily Burke, also from the other place, you are always at the coalface, time and time again. Your sincerity and work ethic are truly inspirational. To the unity leadership of Reggie Martin and Mario Smith, along with the SDA's Josh Peake and Jordan Mumford, you have continued the great outstanding legacy of Don Farrell and Nympha Farrell, and I'm grateful to you all. To the mighty union movement, Sam McIntosh and the TWU, Gary Henderson and the AWU, and all the unions that have supported me throughout my career, the NTU, the IEU and the ASU. Thank you. I wish to acknowledge John, Sonia and their staff, and Hamish, Lucas and Grace and the team from Party Office. I'm grateful to Eloise and Young Labor Unity for all your efforts with the wobbleboarding sessions and the letterboxing blitzes. Keep up the excellent work. I particularly wish to acknowledge our outstanding State Secretary, Eamon Burke, for your unwavering support. You had faith in me from the very beginning, and it's because of that faith I'm standing here today. To the Premier, Peter Malinauskas, I recall first meeting you in 2019, not far from my school, St Thomas. We spoke about the challenges facing our state and shared our disappointment at the recent federal election loss. I knew from that moment that you would be a great Premier. So much has been achieved in your first term, and I look forward to supporting you for the next 4 years and beyond. Family is everything to me. I cherish time with my mother Jan more than ever before, ever since we lost Dad. I'm deeply grateful to my older brother Tim for his support and mentorship throughout the campaign, and I thank him, his wife Tracy, and their children Caleb, Aidan and Indy. I greatly admire my sister Johnine, a woman who broke grounds in the male-dominated mining industry, supported by her husband David and their children Xavier and Sophie. To my father-in-law Jeff, thank you for being such a wonderful popper, a great Labor man, and along with Brad, your kind and generous support. Incidentally, all three of my children have preceded me in this House of Assembly chamber, having participated in the junior and youth parliament programs in recent years. Lachlan, You are driven by a passion for activism and standing up for others. Your commitment to social justice, which you have shown from a very young age, is an admirable quality. Hamish, thank you for being kind, easygoing, and a natural peacemaker. Your measured fiscal discipline will stand you in excellent stead in the future. And Gabby, your dedication to your love of horses and commitment to your studies are truly sensational. I'm delighted that our wonderful Evie has joined our beautiful golden retrievers, Molly and Murphy, as part of our family. To my Nicole, you're a wonderful wife, a brilliant mother, and an outstanding teacher. We have stood together through thick and thin, and the sacrifices we've made along the way, particularly this election campaign, means that I'll now be able to serve the community and enhance the lives of those who need it most. For this, I'm eternally grateful. In very few countries can a family within 5 generations go from a convict having no rights under the law to a member of parliament helping craft the law. Australia was founded on democratic values and the idea of a fair go. These are Australian values, South Australian values, and Labor Party values. And they are the values that deeply matter to me and will guide me every day. Thank you.